Most of our show this week is dedicated to this very important topic and the abuse of power in our country and across the liberal democratic world. I hope this will be the one social justice issue on which we can all unite. I grew up in Joe Bjelke-Petersen's Queensland as a rebellious youngster appalled by the police state that surrounded me. Since a lot of kids today seem to think a police state is a good thing, here's a look at what a peaceful protest looked like in Queensland during the state of emergency in 1982. It all came crashing down for Joe in the late 80s when some brave journalism and a couple of defiant pollies helped launch the Fitzgerald inquiry into police and electoral corruption. The system changed, and we soon had a good centrist Labor government to reform everything under the brilliant young Premier Wayne Goss. So forgive me if I find today's rebellious youth a little bit pathetic at standing up for civil liberties and human rights and preventing the politicisation of the police force. Australia's three Labor premiers are every bit as guilty of using the police force as a political tool as Joe Bjelke-Petersen ever was, and they do it in a much more sneaky way. This was how Melbourne police managed an anti-vax protest on the weekend. Now, if you don't like anti-vax protesters, just imagine in your mind right now any group of citizens campaigning peacefully for your favourite cause. And ask yourself if this is a little on the overkill side of things. If you still doubt whether the policing is politicised or not, let's take a look at a bit more of what happened in Melbourne this weekend, courtesy of our friend, the real Rushkan.
Irrespective of our race, our religion, our culture, we are here today gathered because we do not consent.
Ooh, terrifying. Now, I don't support the anti-vax movement, but I do support liberty. So my opinions overlap there with these people, and I respect 110% their right to peacefully protest, whether they're anti-vax or just anti-coercion or force-vax or just pro-liberty. They were peacefully protesting. There was nothing scary about this event. It could have been a staff picnic and would probably have wrapped up and everyone would have gone home without incident had the police not shown up. So is this the kind of response that we think is proportional and acceptable from our police service in what's supposed to be a free and liberal democracy? Apologies to our podcast listeners again, but those of you on video now, take a look. It's called kettling when police surround protesters. It's a tactic you might use at a violent protest to isolate the troublemakers, not just to create trouble unless you want to, for political purposes. 20 people all up were arrested and charged.
Demonstrations have taken place in all the major cities before the COVID vaccine rollout begins on Monday. Victoria Police says 15 people will receive penalty notices.
Now compare that with the way police handled this protest in Melbourne on Australia Day. It's all very civilised and peaceful, and the police, a much smaller number of them, remain far back and respectful. No unnecessary provocation. Now, I'm not complaining. That is how protests should be handled. Let the people express themselves, even though I strongly disagree with this group. But this leaves zero doubt that the Victorian police force is applying double standards based on political grounds. And that is what makes this the same, and maybe even worse, than the Queensland I grew up in. What's also concerning to me as a former journalist is the lack of concern from the media or the Journalists' Union, the MEAA, about this sort of thing. Melbourne Herald Sun reporter Olivia Jenkins and senior photographer Jake Nowakowski were led away by police in handcuffs as the anti-vax demonstration was unnecessarily moved in on by the police. Are Victorian police unable to tell a reporter from a protester? She's the one who looks like a reporter, with her press pass around her neck and her notebook in her hand, and with the guy who's a photographer from her newspaper beside her. It's the Keystone Cops on hyperdrive down there. I'm a very pro-police kind of person, but this isn't policing. This is full-blown police state-style political bullying. And Olivia is a mainstream media reporter. God help you if you work for an even slightly controversial independent news outfit like Avi Yemeni from Rebel News, who had this experience this week trying to cover Dan Andrews' news conference at Victoria's State Parliament House.
So the Premier called his press conference for 10:15 a.m. in Parliament Gardens. So I got there a few minutes early.
Hello, security.
Hey, go, mate. We're here for the press conference.
Where you from, mate?
Rebel News. There you go. Can you see my ID?
What news was it?
Rebel News.
Have a media pass there, mate?
Yep.
Oh, one sec.
After a couple minutes, security came to the gate, double-checked my media accreditation, and let me in. But as I approached the garden where the rest of the media were waiting for the press conference to begin, a different group of PSOs suddenly surrounded and stopped me.
Can't be here. Not a Parliament grounds. In the interest of security and good order of Parliament,
Sorry?
in the interest of security and good order of Parliament, as an authorised officer under Parliamentary Precincts Act, we're asking you to leave.
Hold on, so I want to understand. So this is a press
go, bro.
conference. The media
Yeah.
is...
No. In the interest of security and good order of
It's not
Parliament House.
communist China. You can't shut down certain media.
Let's go, bro.
Actually, it is like communist China. And what's astounding is that not one of those journalists standing under that tree turned a camera or their interest to the news story that was unfolding right under their noses. Not one. In the 1980s, as a young reporter at 3AW down at State Parliament, we'd have been all over it.
I'm happy here. I'm going to wait because what he's trying to do is actually unlawful. We're not in... You don't have to like our network, but you can't expel us from a press conference. Then suddenly I see Daniel Andrews himself walking towards me. Mr. Premier, do you think it's okay for the media to be shut down at your press conference just because they criticise you? Mr. Premier, are you okay with this? This seems a bit like communist China, not Victoria. I didn't realise at the time why he didn't even look my way, as if he was purposely avoiding me. But as you're about to see, not only is the Premier okay with it, his office ordered my removal. I've never seen such a thing from a Democratic leader, removing journalists they don't like.
Neither have I. Now, a lot of you will probably be saying, oh, that's Avi guy, whatever, he's from Rebel News, aren't they a bit right-wing? Whatever that means anymore. But that's not the point. The point is there were 6 police officers looking military and menacing and behaving like pure bureaucratic robots, implementing the orders of a premier who believes he's above scrutiny in front of a press pack that is suffering from groupthink on a level I've never seen in my professional career outside communist countries. And the Australian Journalists Association, part of the Media Entertainment and Arts Alliance, are nowhere to be seen. We asked for a comment and got no reply. Nor is the Police Association asking why their members are being used as a political enforcement body. Why? Well, maybe it's because they're unions, not real professional associations, and it's left-wing politics they'd have to stand up against here. If you're a member of the MEAA like me, or any police association in Australia, I'd urge you to complain and have your voice heard before it's too late. The job of police in a liberal democracy is not the suppression of peaceful protests or the propping up of politicians. It's the prevention of violent crime.